We have an interesting hour ahead of us, and we're going to start off by coming back onto the football field and projecting onto the 2018 World Cup. The next World Cup is just around the corner, and to tell us all about it is the CEO of the Russian bid himself, Mr. Alexey Sorokin. Give him a warm welcome, please. Alexey. Delighted to have you with us. Alexey, you were here at IFA a few years ago telling us what it was going to be like if you won the vote, which you did, and now you're here to tell us what it's going to be like for real. That was a few years ago now. Tell us how you first of all became involved in the Russia's bid. It was back in 2009?
Yes.
When you first got involved?
Actually, I got involved with football far earlier than that.
Thank you.
I was part of the Moscow government when we won the tender for the IFA Champions League final, and then I became the general coordinator of the whole project, which took us a year. The final was considered successful, and then a proposition came to plunge deeper.
It was considered successful if you were not a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah. Yeah, and then the proposal came to plunge deeper into football. I became the Secretary General of our federation, where I served at the time when the bidding process for the World Cup erupted. Again, the bid was successful. There was a natural transition into CEO of the Organising Committee.
And since you've been traveling around the world and telling people what the World Cup has in store?
Telling the good news, yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to spread some of the good news today. Let's start off by a very open question. Tell us about how things are going. Where are you at? It's less than 2 years to go?
It's going on
less than 3 years to
very
go.
well, in our opinion. We are well on track. May I remind you that it's 11 cities, exactly where we started with. We already know all the specifics of the World Cup. We know where the final is, where the semi-final is. We know the schedule of the matches. The relations with the FIFA are actually very good, working, very constructive. We speak the same language. We have the same objective. Of course, there are a few milestones before the World Cup. We are past one, which was the preliminary draw held in St. Petersburg this summer. We are getting ready for another milestone, which is the draw for the Confederations Cup, which is in December next year in Kazan. Then it's the Confederation Cup itself, and then the World Cup.
That's always seen as a big test, isn't it? The Confederations Cup helps.
It always is, yes, it always is a big test. But we are seriously preparing for that. Our government has a very ambitious infrastructure program, which was much spoken about. Yes, we do spend a lot of money to prepare our infrastructure, but it is something that most of these things would have been built or developed anyway, regardless of the World Cup. It's just things condensed and accelerated because of the World Cup. 11
cities, you said, 12 stadiums?
11 cities, 12 stadiums, exactly.
Of those 12 stadiums, how many of them are brand new?
Basically, all of them. Well, the two stadiums, 3 stadiums have already been commissioned. One of them is being refurbished now, brought to football mode, which is Sochi. Spartak and Kazan are welcoming matches already. Luzhniki is being refurbished. It's the stadium for the opening match and final. So it's the biggest stadium that we'll have.
How many seats will that have?
82.
82,000?
Yeah. The Yekaterinburg Stadium is being refurbished. We use the more or less old walls, but building the interior anew. The rest of the stadiums are going to be brand new.
And how concerned are you about what we often hear about, and we mentioned this morning, the syndrome of the white elephant, you know, the stadiums which are built for a special occasion and afterwards don't really serve the local purpose. How have you addressed that issue?
Well, first of all, when we were picking the cities to be included into our concept during the bid, we were focused on the cities which had already large popular clubs playing in them, or in general the popularity of sport in the region was adequate to have a brand new stadiums. And on the way, there was a prudent joint decision taken between LOC and FIFA to reduce the capacity of the two stadiums, which were where 45,000 is too much. That is Yekaterinburg and Kaliningrad, where we're building 35,000 seaters. And also, last factor, some of the stadiums that are new will have temporary seats during the World Cup, which will be removed, and they will be brought down to legacy mode, which envisions a little less seats. But that is usually the decision of the region. So the region itself is perfectly capable of determining how many seats they really want.
Mm-hmm. How much is necessary for after the World Cup?
Exactly. Yes. And there was one region, this Moscow region, which made a very well-balanced decision to reject the construction of the stadium. They said that they decided there's no need for a stadium, so they voluntarily pulled out from our concept. We welcomed that decision because we thought at the time it was very rational.
Okay, so you're not worried about having gone too big, which is one of the things we were talking about this morning?
No, but we're talking about football, not cricket.
Just paying attention.
Indeed.
We read in June, I'm going to come back to cricket at some stage, I'll try and work it back into the conversation.
You're bound
now. We read in June that there have been cuts to the budget. I'll just note what I saw in the New York Times. It said that the Russian government had cut $560 million from the budget, and that reduced it to a total of 11.8 billion. Does that sound right to you? And is there a particular reason for that?
No, it's a bit difficult for me to think in US dollars because everything is budgeted in rubles. It's a little odd because when we launched the federal infrastructure program, it was 665 billion rubles. And the articles that we saw was that Russia is overspending, there is unnecessary spendings on football. When the program went down 5%, and I'll explain in a minute why it went down, immediately the turn was, well, Russia's not spending enough. So that's the environment we tend to live now. Now, the government spendings for the infrastructure are intact. They remain at the same levels as they were initially. These cuts, the reason for these cuts is mostly accommodation, market-driven factor, where some investors decided that they're not up to investing in hotels at the current in the current state of economy. That is perfectly normal because in all cities we will comply with FIFA regulations, with FIFA requirements for accommodation. So it was okay for us. If it went down naturally and for market reasons, it's quite fine, as long as we remain at the same parameters in terms of sports infrastructure, stadiums and training pitches, in terms of transport, in terms of energy, medical, all the necessary security, of course. So all the essentials are going to remain the same.
But the cost of hosting World Cups obviously rises at almost every tournament. Almost every time we say, this is the most expensive World Cup ever. Will that be the case as well for you?
Well, so I don't think it would be right to use exactly these terms, expensive World Cup, not expensive World Cup. What we're building for our country, for our people. Yes, the World Cup will benefit from this infrastructure, but inevitably it would have been constructed anyway. The roads, would be constructed. In the program, we have, for example, 11 airports to be refurbished, and out of which one is a new airport. So it couldn't be for the World Cup. It's for the people. It's for encouraging tourism, etc. We have 38 hotels, but hotels, again, private business would have invested into these hotels anyway. We're not forcing, as I already explained, we're not forcing business to invest in anything that is not needed. Energy infrastructure would have been revamped anyway. So in this sense, the World Cup is a big accelerator of these investments, of this development of essential things.
It helps crystallize the need and accelerate perhaps things which were going to happen anyway.
Exactly. We are not aiming at impressing the world with spending. Our government is aiming to have a prudent, optimal World Cup in terms of investments into infrastructure. Now, operational costs is another thing because they're mostly borne by FIFA, and that is exactly the budget of the LOC. But there is nothing unnecessary or there's no strange investment in the program for the World Cup.
Okay. There's obviously been lots of talk in recent times about the way that the vote was conducted for 2018 and 2022, even though most of that debate is centered around 2022 more than the award for Russia. As we are here today, is there anything which can prevent Russia hosting the World Cup in 2018? Now, I'm talking about political things which might happen at FIFA in the next few months. Is there any way you could even envisage not having this World Cup in 2018?
Well, if we think about it, then we cannot continue to prepare for it. These thoughts are... we cannot afford these thoughts. We are so far along in our preparation that the things that we think about, that we ponder over, is functional operational plans. It's perimeters, it's having all the necessary infrastructure in place, it's having all the construction sites completed and all the venues commissioned on time. That's the things that are on our table every day. We cannot afford to plunge into speculations about what is the attitude towards World Cup in Russia. It's already in Russia. It will be in Russia. We are preparing for that. Our aim is to prepare the best ever World Cup. Like you said, every World Cup is the best, but I think we are fully equipped to organize a brilliant World Cup with Russian flavor.
What is a Russian flavor?
No, it's a good question.
I resisted the temptation to talk about vodka immediately. Tell us about the
Thank you.
World Cup.
I was
with
thinking caviar, but vodka was also not bad.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm looking forward to the World Cup in Russia, personally.
Thank you. Yeah. And so do many people. It's well, first of all, the first word that comes to my mind is hospitality. I mean, it's at the inception of our concept, we did a survey, and this is not the opinion of LOC. This is an opinion of myself. That it was the dominating opinion of people in our country that the biggest factor in the preparation of the World Cup is hospitality, and it was absolute leader in all the qualities that were presented. And it will be hospitable. It will be cordial. It will be from our heart.
And you feel that when you're going around stadium to stadium and city to city, do you already feel that there's this desire that people have locally to have the world come to Russia? I remember vividly, for example, covering the European Championships in Portugal in 2004, and it was a very important factor in the success of that event. And it's often the case when you go to the country that the whole country is happy that you're there. Do you get that kind of feeling then?
you cannot imagine how many various initiatives coming from people from the regions concerned are on my desk every day. And there is no doubt that the regions, which are part of our concept, are fired up with the whole idea of the World Cup. There is a tremendous interest from the fan community. There is very good enthusiasm from the leaders of these cities, of these regions. I have no doubt that the level of enthusiasm by 18 will reach its peak and will be fantastic.
Looking forward to it. My job is also to, of course, ask you some less comfortable questions. So let's get that out of the way now. I read a recent interview with Mr. Blatter, and I'll quote him. He said, "It was agreed we go to Russia and then for 2022 to America, so we had the two biggest superpowers. Everything was fine until the moment Sarkozy, French Prime Minister of the time, Prime Minister, he was President, had a meeting with the Crown Prince of Qatar." That was Blatter's quote. I guess you've seen that. What was your reaction to
the article? Yes. The meeting, no.
Okay. So what did you think when you read that then?
Well, certainly, who am I to comment on President Blatter's words? But the way I read it is that the implication, the implied sense was that it would have been understood and welcomed by a certain group of people if the World Cup went to Russia. Because if we think seriously about an agreement, the first question that came to me is an agreement between who? There were, at the time of the bid, so many various opinions, so many various positions on who to vote for, that this agreement in the classic sense would not be possible. I mean, there were people who openly told us that they would prefer to vote for somebody else. Now, how do you picture them in? Such an agreement, again, in the classic sense, wouldn't be possible. Seriously, I think there is a different implied sense in that. It's just that the way we're living in such an atmosphere now that people want to see in these words what they want to see, based on the climate of finger pointing, of the speculation, of accusations, etc.
You weren't aware of any agreement?
So I don't see anything malicious in these words.
We had Sir Martin Sorrell with us this morning, and he said that the British were promised, people had promised them to vote for them. They thought they were going to have 8 votes in the first round. They only got 2, and we hoped that one of them was a British vote. How many votes did you expect to get? Did you have a situation like that where you had more votes or less votes than expected?
So it's a very interesting question to me, because I consider myself formerly a bidder, a professional bidder. I went through Moscow's unsuccessful bid to host the Olympic Games, where we lost to London. I went to a successful bid for IAAF championships, which went on in Moscow 2 years ago. There were many other bids, both successful and unsuccessful. The worst thing that you can do during bidding is start counting votes. Then it becomes very twisted. So we deliberately stayed off this futile exercise and just tried to present as much as possible the advantages that Russia can bring to the realm of football. We spoke to everybody who we could. We continued to speak to people who even openly said to us that we are not their preference, in hopes that we could be their second preference, in hopes that they might change their opinion. So this is something that we didn't do.
Mr. Blatter also said
however,
that...
hoping to be successful.
Which you were. Mr. Blatter also said that if some European votes had not switched from the US to Qatar, we're talking 2022 again, then we would never have had the recent FIFA crisis because the Americans would never have got involved because he obviously sees it as at least in part, as a kind of American-led campaign. Do you give that any credence, that line of thinking?
That is an opinion. It's a valid opinion, but I think what's more important is that, and we heard that many times during the morning session, that it's a good time for reforming FIFA came. It would have come regardless of the choice of the country, of the opinions, who to vote for. I mean, it comes naturally. It's an evolution. We're at the point when evolution brought us to this moment. So most likely it had to happen anyway, maybe not as painfully as it is happening now. Because it is painful, and as part of the team that tries to increase the value of the World Cup, I can tell you that it's very important not to get fully embraced by this game of accusations, and not to spill the baby with the water. We need to preserve the thing with the utmost value, and that is the World Cup, and not try to destroy everything. I mean, there were many allusions to ecosystem today, and if we think in terms of ecosystems, if there is a pipeline that is leaking, it doesn't mean that the ecosystem is totally wrong and we need to destroy it. We should just repair the pipeline, or maybe change the flows in the pipeline. But it doesn't mean that ecosystem is wrong.
So we were talking about the problem of credibility this morning. Are you confident that enough is being done at a fast enough pace to try to correct some of those problems, so that you can have a World Cup without some of those issues being played in the background?
I'm certain that all the necessary efforts are being done, whether they're right or wrong, whether something is right or wrong. Well, time will show. But it's the very fact that the FIFA system is keen on changing itself, changing its act. It's quite natural. But in terms of credibility, I think that football is such a strong product, and namely the World Cup is such a strong product, that it can survive and go through many crises. I mean, we saw approximately the same processes in the world of Olympics after the Salt Lake scandal. But the product of the Olympic Games is so strong that it basically restored itself, and we see now how powerful it is. We see how many references are made to the Olympic Games, be that Sochi or London or somewhere else.
How important was the success of the Winter Games in Sochi for you guys preparing for the next major event?
Very important for the same reason of credibility. I mean, our country does have that credibility, whether some people like it or not. I mean, we proved that we are competent in organizing major sports events. The expertise is there, the know-how is there, the will is there, the enthusiasm on the part of the government and the necessary effort on the part of the government is there. But most importantly, the will. I mean, it's the biggest factor in our world.
And we'll come back to some of the logistics. We touched upon it at the beginning, because this is one of your biggest challenges, of course. Russia is not a small country. That's the understatement of the day. 11 different cities. 11 different cities.
It's the biggest in terms of territory.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you're going to be the country will be undertaking all sorts of measures to make things easier for fans and players, of course, to travel around. And I did a little bit of calculation before I came along. I used my Maps app, and apparently I can get from Sochi to St. Petersburg by car in only 29 hours, if I don't stop to go to the toilet. So So I guess I'm not going to be hiring a car for that trip. But to be serious, you obviously have some journeys which are going to be huge for different people to move around in. What have you been doing in recent times to try to cut down the travel time for fans, players?
I mean, shrinking the western part of our country. No, I would look at it from another angle. If you take the two extreme cities, it takes only, 3-4 hours to get from one to another. If you take Moscow as a center, there's no city that is further than 2-hour plane ride. So my advice is, first of all, think seriously about taking a car if you want to go from St. Petersburg to Sochi. But at the same time, we do not, by comparison to other World Cup geographies, well, I think we're on the safe side. The distances are not that considerable. At least if you take Korea, Japan, you could travel by car in Russia. No, but we do not see these distances as a major challenge of the World Cup. There is very adequate air connection between all these cities. There is a very developed system of railroads which connect every city. That is part of our concept. There are roads for buses and cars, and plus, as an additional incentives, we are developing now the specifics of our sort of self-induced guarantee to provide free transportation. We're developing together with FIFA and our transport authorities the free routes that fans will take with their ticket. So some of the routes will be free.
You have a ticket, there's a possibility of free transport?
Yes. Right, like I said, we're developing this because we cannot make the entire transport system free. Mm-hmm. We're developing specific features of that system right this moment, so we'll announce it in due time, but it will be in place. It will not reduce distances, but it will be very convenient.
What's the situation regarding visas? If I want to go to Moscow tomorrow, I have to apply for a visa. If I have a World Cup ticket, will I have to apply for a visa, or are you going to have special measures in place?
Well, that is another volunteer promise that we made during the bid. Our government has signed a guarantee that fans will travel without visas to Russia during the World Cup, and we intend to keep it. Again, like with free transport, we're developing the specifics of that particular system, how it would look like. That does not mean that that ticket becomes a visa, because ticket is a ticket. Mm-hmm. It's not a visa. Visa is different. But fans will travel without a visa, and process will be streamlined and simplified for all ticket holders.
For ticket holders only?
For ticket holders only, yes. So
because we have a phenomenon with English fans, you're probably familiar with that. A lot of English people travel to assist to go to World Cups or to other sports events without tickets, but just to be there, to enjoy the atmosphere. I imagine you're going to be having fan zones and things like that. That's not going to apply to these people then?
Yes, but in general, our consulate offices throughout the world will be aware that there are people traveling to Russia, will be prepared to work with large groups of people applying for a document to enter the Russian Federation. But letting anybody into the country has also a security dimension. I'm sure after what we've seen recently, and unfortunately, Russia was one of the countries concerned with the recent attacks. We cannot just let anybody into the country. I mean, neither the LOC nor fans would welcome that and feel it. They would simply feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. So there has to be appropriate control of who enters the country, who enters the stadium, who is part of the World Cup celebration, in order for it to be a true celebration.
And this is obviously part of the difficulty of staging a major sports event in these days, is to maintain the joy and the party atmosphere at the same time having these security concerns. How much effect do you think will have? I know it's very early to say, but what we saw on Friday in Paris, where the National Stadium was targeted by terrorists, a sports event was deliberately targeted. What effect is that going to have on the way you're thinking about security for Russia?
Well, our authorities have been preparing a security concept. It is our obligation by all documents signed between the Russian Federation and FIFA, and there's a large group of law enforcement agencies involved in that work. These attacks like this have always been considered as a threat and have been taken into account in preparing these documents. I don't think we can be any more serious about security than we have been previously. We are certain that our security forces will ensure the necessary level of public safety during the World Cup. I mean, if you look at the past events, there was not a single incident having to do with security. That speaks for itself. We know how to organize it. We will do our best to organize it in such a way that it does not spoil the celebrations, spoil the festivities, but people must feel safe. That is absolutely paramount.
Talking about atmosphere, when we get there, so you've been promising us a great reception, a great welcome from the Russian people. Let's go back over one of the things which I guess you get asked about regularly, and can't be a nice thing to have to talk about for you, but people are concerned about the racism that we see sometimes in Russian stadiums, and we've all seen pictures of, there was Roberto Carlos, and with people throwing bananas, and Hulk, who plays for St. Petersburg, sometimes gets jeered in a racist manner. How serious do you consider the problem of racism in football stadiums? And of course, I'm not saying it only happens in Russia, but it's something I guess you're having to address. How serious is the problem?
Yeah, we take it very seriously. We are part of international endeavor to combat racism. We acknowledge that the issue exists, but we're not trying to overblow it. It does exist, but it's not absolutely characteristic of our society. I mean, we're a country of 140 million people with more than 100 ethnic groups, nationalities, etc., and they peacefully coexisted for many years. So we couldn't possibly be a racist country. It's not a trait of the society, and I would strongly argue with everyone who says otherwise. Having said that, there is a big effort on the part of the Russian Football Union. It has appointed recently a special delegate for anti-racism, the special responsible person whose task it is to only combat the racism, to develop appropriate strategies.
Yeah, I read about that, the anti-racism inspector.
Yeah, anti-racism inspector, exactly. So, but it comes with...
What will he be doing?
It comes with the culture of the society, it comes with educating the fan community, and it comes with real results, come with personalized liability. Now, all new stadiums will have appropriate technical features to absolutely ensure personal liability for this, and we have all the necessary rules of conduct for fans in place and adopted by the government. The spectators are or should be aware of these rules of conduct.
Does that mean you'll throw people out of stadiums if there's racist?
No, there's banning from stadiums. It depends on the gravity of the misconduct, but it could be anything from administrative measures, even up to criminal measures, depending on how grave the misconduct is.
So, how confident are you that the 2018 World Cup will pass without any racist incidents in or around the stadium?
Well, the World Cup, as we know, is a huge international celebration. It suggests that there are various people from various corners all around the world, and there's no place for racism during the World Cup. I mean, we should separate these incidents, and I cannot call it a trend. I can call it incidents, because whether we want it or not, the football games are considered a stage for certain individuals that want to show themselves off. It's true. It doesn't mean they're fans, doesn't mean they came to the stadium. If you take 45,000 people, there would be one that didn't come there to watch a game. He came to the game for a totally different purpose. And it's hard to stop that. You can stop that with personalized responsibility.
There's a similar concern around homosexuals. I've been reading that some gay groups have been urging even for a boycott. They're worried about coming to Russia and perhaps not being as welcome as they would like. Can you reassure gay fans about their safety?
Yes, I can. Well, the basic principle which we adhere to is that there's no discrimination on the principle of religion, sex, race, whatever, you name it. Gay fans can feel absolutely safe. They will be treated exactly like anybody else.
Next question.
But it's hard to say, because it's hard to elaborate on this issue, because having been in football for many years, I don't see any grounds to make that a serious issue. I don't know of a single incident at the football game where a gay person felt insulted or his rights were infringed. So I don't know where this stems from. Therefore, it's hard for me to really go on forever about it.
Let's move on to something less controversial. The doping scandal.
Not bad. Thank you.
Obviously, this is not your responsibility, Alexey. But I have to ask you about this, of course, because of the suspension we mentioned this morning of the Russian Athletics Federation. There's also been talk about cover-up at the highest level, with samples being destroyed, and we're now told that the anti-doping laboratory is not trustworthy. What can you do between now and the World Cup to ensure that we can have faith in the Russian anti-doping system, which will be present, of course, at the World Cup? Or do you think that you may have to outsource and have an outside body taking care of that?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, I am personally not a part of this of this process, so I may not know the specifics. I know that certainly I know that our federation has been suspended from IAAF. I certainly know that the accreditation of our laboratory has been lifted temporarily. But firstly, both our officials and international officials stated very clearly that these things will be restored if there is a specific transparent process in place, and that they are witness to that process. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it will be decided, and I'm not part of that decision, whether and when our lab restores its accreditation. But again, even if it does not, and I'm speaking theoretically now, because again, I don't know the specifics of that process. Even if it doesn't, the World Cup will still occur, and it has no impact on the success of the World Cup. I mean, some countries which hosted the World Cup didn't have a lab at all, and there is a technical solution to that. It doesn't have direct impact on the success of the World Cup.
It's something you could have done without, not the kind of publicity that
you
would have wished for.
Yes.
I think we can fairly say.
We could do without it, yes.
You know what? Let's bring you back onto the football field.
But again, sorry to take you back, but
Yes.
We already discussed that there are facts and there are deliberations, speculations, opinions, so we should clearly delineate between that. If there are facts, we're happy to consider them. Mr. Mutko, who's the Minister of Sport, has been entrusted with holding an investigation and find who is responsible specifically for what occurred in our anti-doping efforts. But we cannot work with this finger-pointing process. Somebody thought that somebody is involved, etc. It's hard to offset these things because there are no facts behind that. You cannot you cannot work with them. You cannot try to really whitewash yourself if you don't know what really is behind it, except for opinions. Mm-hmm. Anybody can say anything about a certain official, but how well founded that is, well, there are facts.
Remains to be seen. Let's bring you back onto the football field then, okay? Quiz.
Thank you.
Quiz. What do the following teams or countries have in common? Uruguay, Italy, England, West Germany, Argentina and France.
Unfortunately, I know the answer.
You do?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Did they win the World Cup which they hosted?
Indeed they did, yes, well done. What chances do you think Russia has of joining that illustrious list?
First of all, we wish our team the very best of luck and all the success in the world, because this does have, unlike the previous issue, this does have a certain emotional impact on the success of the World Cup.
Sure.
So our federation, all the experts in football are making a great effort now to increase, to stimulate the performance of our team. We're full of hopes in general that our team performs. We had our downs, we had our ups. Recent series of matches where we were successful. We won most of them. We lost the recent friendly to Croatia 3-1, but the all-important games we won recently. So our team is capable of comprehending the responsibility when the time is right. I mean, we performed quite well at Euro 2008. We were third. We shared the third place.
Mm-hmm. But as a man who's used to watching his national team lose matches, because I'm from England, I have to remind you that you don't have a great record at the World Cup either. That 66, the Soviet Union got to the semi-final. But since Russia has been playing as Russia, you haven't got beyond the first phase, the first group stage.
We haven't got out of the group phase, that's true.
So we agree that this is not foreseeable. In 2018, something has to change.
But there's a saying in Russian that at home walls help you. No, there is nothing wrong with this saying. There's no implication. It's a very warm saying in general. That doesn't mean we can play with the pitch or anything. The pitch will be equal for both teams. And the referees are not our responsibility. But
you hasten to underline, yes. But I see that you've made some rule changes
with the good pressure of responsibility. I hope this will account for extra performance of our team.
And you've been recently changed the rules in the local league as well to reduce the number of foreign players in
it's all done for one purpose, to
the World Cup.
To enable homegrown players to play more. Yeah, the formula is now 6+5.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish you well on the field because. As an Englishman, it's been too long. In 1966, the only time we ever won it. But when you win at home, it's very nice. So I wish you lots of luck on the football field, and thank you for taking the time to come and chat to us today.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have a question or two. Feel free to raise a hand, ask for a microphone, introduce yourselves. Patrick has a question here. Lots of very shy people here today.
Don't want to monopolise this. Like Sir Martin, I also was on one of the bid committees. I wasn't on the English committee, I was on the Japan. And that gave me the fortune or misfortune of probably having to listen to every presentation from every bidding nation probably 6 or 7 times. And I can say I'm looking forward also to coming to Russia, because there's no question from my point of view as an experienced person within FIFA, within football, that Russia offered the best opportunity for the 2018 World Cup. The others, such as England, have everything. There was no need for them to bid because football is everything, the league is everything, the stadiums are there, and it was very clear that the bid from Russia was clearly, from anybody's perspective that was involved, a very, very sensible and a very, very logical reason to take the World Cup to Russia. However, my question is really related to the experience to what I saw from Brazil. Brazil didn't capture the moment of having the World Cup and hosting the World Cup as it related to restructuring its football, restructuring its leagues, putting together an organisation that could then take their own domestic football forward to the degree that it should. And it still languishes way behind the calibre and the quality of what Brazilian football is. The strong ethos that came across to me listening to all these presentations was what Russia could do and Russia could provide to football to the future. Hence, you've been awarded it. Are you doing everything that you need to do to make sure that that legacy, that football legacy, in terms of leagues, of players, of investment, of all the things that perhaps Brazil didn't do, that Russia will do to capture the legacy of that World Cup?
I'd like to answer yes, but there is many facets in the response to that question. We are certainly doing everything we can in terms of infrastructure, and infrastructure is an important part of football. Without a pitch, you cannot train, you cannot play. So infrastructurally, we'll be on time, we'll be on track, and by a certain date, we'll have 12 brand new stadiums, we'll have 102 brand new pitches, which will be used as training sites before the game and for team-based camps. I just hope that we'll be on time with the metaphysical side of it, with preparing the players, with motivating the players, with creating the necessary momentum for the success. Needless to say, we are very keen to build that successful momentum. That's why a decision was taken to keep all of that in the hands of Minister Mutko, who is now not only the Minister of Sport, but the chairman of the LOC and the president of the Russian Football Union. This provides consistency in all the policies and all the strategies of many domains concerned. But whether we achieve that or not, we'll see when the time comes. We certainly hope to be.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're done? Yes, over here. This handsome chap in the glasses.
By the way, there are a lot of trips by various teams now who are already choosing the team-based camps. So we're as far as that already.
Oh yeah, they're coming and checking it out.
Yeah.
Alexey, hi, Ben Littleton from Soccernomics. You mentioned right at the end the change in the rules to enable more homegrown players to play in the league. What evidence do you have that having more homegrown players will actually help the national team and not hinder it? Would more foreign players actually help the development of younger players?
Well, As you can imagine, there has been a lot of debate in our football community about that, and there is many schools of thought. One school of thought is that having a lot of foreign players stimulates competition, concurrence. But yet another school of thinking, which is dominant right now, is that sometimes the clubs are tempted to purchase a ready solution rather than to be involved in a long process of creating that solution in a certain player, in a person of a certain player. Sometimes it's easier for a club to let a good foreign player play today and score goals for his club today, rather than try to build up and discover a potential in a new player, in a young player. So this decision allows a good balance between protecting the interests of the clubs and bringing up this potential in the young players. I hope I responded.
Good afternoon, Alexey. You already talked about this. It's about security. From what happened in Paris on Friday, will you review your security plan, and can you give any details on how much you plan to put in security? How many people will be involved?
Well, like I said, in the initial plans, threats like this were accounted for. They were taken into account. They were considered very seriously, because regrettably, Russia was a victim of terrorist acts before. We know what this threat is about. We know how difficult it is to combat it, to pinpoint the incident before it occurs. So this has always been in our strategies, in our security concepts.
Are we done? I think we are. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Alexey Sorokin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we wish you a great World Cup, Alexey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.